to everyone. We're on item 1, any apologies? I think we have apologies from Councillor Caroline Cooper-Marbert. Any other apologies? Thank you. We're on any declarations of interest, item 2. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you, there are none. We're on item 3 now, that's the minutes of our meeting held on the 10th of December 2019. Are they agreed? Thank you. We move on to item 4, and that's the reference from the Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny Account, a strategic approach to parking charges. Councillor Toby Byers and Councillor Martin Wilton will lead on this. Can I ask Peter Southgate to take his seat? He will be speaking for 3 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Southgate, for being here. Councillor Byers.
Well, just to thank the scrutiny panel for their work on this last week. I think the paper that's before Cabinet is a good summary of the debate. There were a range of views heard, and no doubt Councillor Southgate will elaborate on those when he speaks. I think it's important to note that this was one part of the consultation process that we're going through, so we asked scrutiny to have a look at this, and there's a further consultation planned to take place in due course. So we welcome scrutiny's involvement. We look forward to their further involvement in due course, and thank you for their time last week.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martin Welton.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate the points that Councillor Byers has made in relation to scrutiny. We believe that scrutiny did a thorough job in terms of looking over the policy and asking probing questions in relation to the policy which went before Cabinet and onto scrutiny. We thought it was essential that scrutiny did have a look at the policy before it went out to consultation. Clearly they've made a recommendation to Cabinet tonight. I think that I have no problem in terms of accepting the recommendation because we know there is a very strong case in terms of air quality and emissions, and that parking charges will play a key role in actually reducing the usage of cars within the borough. So I fully believe that this is accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. I'll now turn to the lead officer on this issue, Chris Lee.
Very little to add, Chair. At the previous Cabinet meeting, authority was delegated to officers to proceed with consultation with the relevant Cabinet members. And I note that the scrutiny recommendations look forward to this approach and seek additional evidence. We'll be making that additional evidence available, in particular a Leeds University research report, which looks at the charging for parking and the link between that and the increased charges and the reduction in parking events. So we'll make that available and point to any other additional research as part of the consultation process, which is planned in the near future. But I note the comments and we'll now proceed to finalise that consultation and bring that forward at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other Cabinet members wishing to speak on this item? Thank you. We now turn to Councillor Peter Southgate for his contribution, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm stepping in for Councillor Blacksmith, as well as you know, who's Chair of Sustainable Communities. Just to a very thorough meeting, we took evidence from 3 representatives, Sustainable Morden, Love Wimbledon, and a local resident. And I'll just canter through the points they made. I would have appreciated more consultation with local business, so that perhaps can be built into future stages. They asked whether more couldn't be done by way of communications to get the message across, more nudge than stick, if you like. At this stage, there is a question over whether there is in fact a causal link between increasing charges and bringing about a change in behaviour, driver behaviour. And I think that remains to be proven, doesn't it? The other interesting point made is that the higher charges in Wimbledon for annual permits, for example, effectively discriminate against a particular group of residents because charges are lower in other parts of the borough. So, discussion terms at panel and a number of motions at the end of that. One, that as this was outside the budgetary and policy framework, it should be referred to full council rather than cabinet, but on officer advice that motion did not go ahead. A motion that we should first be making efforts to improve public transport and air quality, therefore, in the east of the borough, before, so a process of levelling up, if you like, so that it was not necessary to target residents of Wimbledon or Rains Park with higher levels of permit fees. And that really another and a different solution should be sought to address health inequalities between the two halves of the borough. The motion from the chair welcomed the attempt to use parking charges to improve air quality, but we will, well, the Sustainable Communities have said they would want to monitor just how effective that is. Firstly with the diesel levy, which we will have had for some 2 years, I think, come April of this year. And secondly, then once we implement these higher charges, looking some 6 to 12 months on to see what effect they're having. So in a word, thank you for the opportunity. Absolutely no argument about the crucial need to improve air quality in the news again today. But a wish on the part of Sustainable Communities to hear the evidence as it feeds back to the implementation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your contribution. And I'm pleased to say that the recommendation we're accepting today is in line with your wishes and the wishes of the scrutiny panel. So we're on item 4, the reference from the Sustainable Communities Energy and Scrutiny panel to the approach to parking charges. We have recommendation 1, which refers to paragraph 2.8 in the said papers. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 5. I'd like to ask Beverly Boateng from the Youth Parliament to take a seat next to Councillor Southgate, and I'll call on you at a particular point in time. But first of all, keeping young people safe in Merton, Councillor Kelly Braun.
Thank you. So this report really does 2 things. Firstly, it's a really good piece of work looking at what Merton is doing to keep young people safe, particularly from the perspective of our young people themselves. I really thank the Youth Parliament for their thorough consultation and insightful analysis, and the work of the Safe in Merton team and our partners in the police, who do work hard both with our children and young people and the rest of our community to make sure that people in Merton feel safe. Secondly, this report shows just how important it is that young people have a voice in every forum, including scrutiny. This shouldn't just be limited to consulting on or scrutinising the changes happening in children's services, but also feeding into decisions such as our strategies on keeping our community safe. We have a good record of use of voice here in Merton, but we're not complacent. And I want to see a real partnership with our youth forums, councils and Parliament, ensuring that the views of our children and young people are heard and acted upon, so that we can build strong, safer communities that they feel they have ownership over and can be proud of. So, I thank our Youth Parliament scrutineers for their hard work and their practical recommendations that I hope will be well received this evening, and I hope that they will be the first set of many recommendations to come. And I'm sure that Beverly will set them out very well shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Kevin. Over to Edith Macaulay, Councillor Edith Macaulay.
Right. I think on the safer marketing side of it, I think knife crime has reduced slightly in Martin over the last 12 months. But the fear of crime is there. And as we can see, over the last 12 months in London itself, there has been a lot of young people involved in crime. And I think our borough in Martin is doing all we can to make sure that young people are safe. And there's an issue about stop and search, which some people object to because they feel that certain group of people are targeted, and we're monitoring the situation to see what can be done in terms of how to reduce the fear of crime. We saw last week a 14-year-old boy was knifed, run down by a vehicle, and we don't want to see that in Martin. It is becoming, a very major issue, and I think the mayor himself is trying his best to stop the issue amongst young people, of carrying a knife, because some of them feel that carrying a knife is a safe place for protecting themselves. And I think the police we have in Martin are working very, very well with our youth to ensure that we keep the numbers down in Martin compared with other boroughs in London.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I now turn to our lead officer, Rachel Wardell.
Very little to add, Leader, other than to commend the Youth Parliament for their engagement in this activity, and to thank colleagues in the participation team and Democratic Services who really made it possible to engage young people in scrutiny for the first time here, and it was so successful that I'm confident that we'll be able to replicate it and engage young people's voice in our democratic decision making. That feels very important.
Thank you very much for that, Rachel. Any other cabinet members wishing to speak on this item before I turn to Beverly? No, thank you. Beverly Boateng, welcome to the Cabinet meeting. Thank you for what you do on the Youth Parliament, and we're really keen to hear from you. Thank you.
Sorry, you're going to hear from me first.
Okay.
Beverly, leads the Youth Parliament and led on this particular project. We met back in October, some 5 members of the Youth Parliament, 7 councillors, to address the question, what is Merton doing to help young people feel safe? Now, largely this was an exercise to teach the Youth Parliament how scrutiny works, how we call witnesses, how we question them, we discuss the findings. As sometimes happens, the roles of teacher and pupil were reversed in the course of the evening. And I think we as councillors learned far more actually about the concerns of the Parliament than I hope they learned something about scrutiny. What I took away from it is that the perceptions of young people are totally different from mine, possibly from yours, I suspect too. And we really need to hear direct from them. We can't intuit what they feel about these things because Beverly will tell you that the perceptions are everything, particularly when it comes to crime, as Councillor Macaulay said, and we need to hear it from them. So I hope this will be the first of many such exercises where we hear directly from the young people.
Thank you. Beverly, over to you.
Thank you. So, as was said, we met for the first time as a joint Youth Parliament and Merton Council scrutiny exercise. This is for Local Democracy Week, and it was our very first time being able to see what you guys do for a living. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed it greatly, and we got to debate our ideas about what we thought could be done and what we are all doing to make Merton a safer place. So we talked mostly about our consultation from the young advisors about what is Merton doing to keep young people safe, where we conducted surveys from 742 young people aged between 11 and 20 years old. And from what we gathered, we learned that boys were much less likely to fill in questionnaires than girls were. 23 of respondents gave no response to the question, what does safety in Merton mean to you? Which is obviously a problem because they don't know what safety means to them in this borough. Mitcham is also perceived as the least safe area in Merton, whereas Wimbledon is seen as the safest. 1 in 3 respondents were aware of someone who had committed a crime, and 1 in 10 had been a victim of crime in their life. And lastly, but probably the most shocking statistic, was that stabbing and knife crime are perceived as the most common crime, which was actually debunked by Mark Roberts, the surgeon present there, and Timothy Pecuniary, who is from Safe and Merton. So in addition to that, we also looked at knife crime, stop and search, and police cadets, and young people were very opinionated about that, as we so usually are. So we gave our opinions onto that, and we talked about how we could be involved in scrutiny more often and in the future, so that we can improve our services for young people who they are designed for. Because if you are going to do something for a certain group of people, you should probably include them in your decision making as well. So I'm pleased to say that it was agreed to involve young people in scrutiny in the future, and I'm sure that it will be great working alongside some of you, all of you, in making this possible.
Thank you very much, Beverly, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for that report. We'll certainly read it avidly and interesting survey results. And yes, we'd love you to be more closely involved, not only with scrutiny, but with the council as a whole. And I know the Youth Parliament works very closely with everyone, but we need to hear from the youth of Merton on an even bigger scale. And thank you very much for that. So we're on item 5, keeping young people safe in Merton. We have recommendations 1 to 3, with the third recommendation opting to delegate to the Director of CSF, that's Rachel Wardell, to take this work further. Is that agreed? Thank you. Now move on to item 6, local discretionary business rate relief scheme and retail discount schemes for 2019-2020. Councillor Mark Harris.
Thank you, Leader, and I'd like to thank Caroline Holland and David Kaplan and their teams for their work on this. As you know, we're a business-like council and a business-like administration, and we do what we can to support business. I know your background through the Federation of Small Businesses is something that's particularly important to you personally. We know that local businesses help Merton to thrive and contribute a great deal towards making this borough a great place for families. So we do try and help them where we can. And tonight we're recommending the way forward on 2 reliefs that we provide: the local discretionary business rate relief scheme and the retail discount scheme. It's important to say at the outset that we don't set business rates. They're set by the government, and unfortunately business rates for a lot of our businesses have gone up substantially in recent years, and they've been hit by the government's policies. However, we do get some discretionary grant that we can use from the government. This is falling over at present. In 2017-18 it was worth 459,000 by pounds, but by 2020-21 that will have fallen to 13,000. However, we use the money that we get to provide relief to the businesses that have been most affected by the changes and the increases in business rates. And this paper sets out how we should continue with that scheme in order to do what we can to help businesses through the transition of the extra charges. In effect, the businesses we assisted in 2018-19 will continue to receive support from us in future years. Then the retail discount scheme. We that's a scheme that we run, and at present an analysis of businesses in the borough where the rateable value is less than 51,000 has been undertaken by us, and we reckon that there are something like 530 retail businesses who will benefit from the scheme that we're promoting tonight. And the total that they'll be awarded will be in the region of £2 million. Given the pressures on the retail sector, particularly smaller retailers, I think this is a good thing that we're doing. We do what we can to help businesses where we can as a good business like council, and I recommend that we approve the recommendations of the paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allison. I now turn to the lead officer, Caroline Holland, on this.
There's not a lot of information to add, Chair, but just to say that it's anticipated that both of these schemes will be implemented in time for the bill, so there won't be a rebid into the bills. We'll already have the reduction in place. We have very little discretion in the retail discount scheme, but we are fully funded for that one, but it is the local discretionary rate relief one where the funding has been falling over the past 2 years. And as you can see, we're still supporting 363 organisations, and we'll continue to support. The funding does drop dramatically in 2021, so hopefully there will be some businesses still there, but they will get a lot less money. And we've obviously got the business ratepayers consultation meeting on the 13th of February, for which an invite has gone out, and actually this has been made as well to encourage people to come forward to talk to us about this.
Thank you very much. It's my understanding that on the application process, when I was at the Federation of Small Businesses, one of the concerns was that in a number of authorities, businesses have to apply, but here we do the homework, we find out who qualifies, and we automatically engage them in that discount or in that relief. And that's very helpful to small businesses. I know that the FSB is very grateful that the London Borough of Merton is automatically seeking those businesses qualified rather than waiting for them to apply. Thank you very much for that. So we're on item 6, the local discretionary business rate relief scheme and retail discount scheme. We're on recommendations 1 and 2. They agreed. Thank you very much. We're on item 7, council tax care leavers. Councillor Mark Allison.
Thank you again, Leader, and once again I'd like to thank the officers who've done so much work on this for us, led by Caroline Holland and David Kepler. To appreciate their efforts. As I said just earlier, it's our aspiration that Merton should be a great place for families. We recognise, as mentioned earlier, the role of businesses in that. But I think that it's also important to recognise that the council itself plays a very important role in making the area a great place for families. And in particular, one set of young people who we help, who are our care, who are children in care, and they're very important to us, and we really welcome the opportunity to give them a good start in life. One of the things that we've recognised and been thinking about for a little while is what help we can give to them as they leave care and go into the world of adulthood. And we've come to the conclusion that it would be a good idea if we could ensure that they were exempt from council tax up until the age of 25. This paper sets out how we intend to do it, what the costs would be. Stresses that this is a very modest measure in reality, but although it's a small measure to us as a council, we know as the corporate parents for these children who are becoming adults that it's a chance to help them in a great way, and so I recommend that we approve the paper here tonight.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Allison. I now turn to Councillor Kelly Braun.
So, as Councillor Allison said, in Merton we aim to make this borough a great place for families, and as corporate parents we all work really hard to ensure that our care leavers are afforded the same care, security and stability as any parent would want for their child. We're passionate about making sure they lead safe, healthy and happy lives where they can achieve their full potential. Now, as part of our commitment to all our care leavers, I'm really pleased that we're able to bring this paper, which I hope Cabinet agrees, to add another way in which we're able to support our care leavers who live in Merton into independence. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Allison and to Councillor Paul for your passion for our children and our care leavers here in the London Borough of Merton. Caroline Holland then, or Rachel Wardell, would you like to add anything to this debate?
I suppose just care leaders will have to apply for this, but as we're trying to make it as streamlined as possible, you can download forms on the internet to be able to do that. It's just because we don't want to actually have to pay to have an alteration to our actual system, because that is costing almost half as much as the actual scheme itself costs, and we don't think that's an effective use of money, so therefore we just want people to be able to apply. And as you can see, the majority of our young care leavers are already supported with full council tax support anyway. So it is sort of an additional 15 that we were looking at this stage, but clearly with the numbers that we've got coming through, we will be keeping an eye on that and what it does mean. And the GLA do contribute to the additional costs as well.
Thank you. Rachel, did you want to add anything? Okay, thank you. So we're on item 7, council tax care leavers. Although small in numbers, it sends a strong message from us as a council, as a caring council, as a business-like council, to support those who need support. And in this case, it is our care leavers. We as a council are corporate parents, all councillors are corporate parents, and we are the parents, the corporate parents to a number of children, and we want them to get the best deal in life, and we want to help them through any difficulties, including the exemption from council tax payments. So we're on item 7. Recommendation 1 provides tax exemption on council tax for our care leavers. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Now on item 8, draft business plan 2019-23. Councillor Mark Addison.
Yeah, and thank you again, Leader, and thank you again to Caroline and her team who work so hard on the business plan. It's very important to us that we go through this process effectively and comprehensively and thoroughly. This is an update really in large part on where we were before Christmas. Gives us some information about the government settlement and what we're likely to, or what we're going to be receiving. Prior to Christmas, we did our own estimate about what it was likely that we'd receive, and that helped in the planning of the business plan and the budget for the coming 4 years. And I'm pleased to say that actually the estimates, the work that went in prior to Christmas, has turned out that it's pretty close to what the reality has been in terms of what the government is prepared to give us. Unfortunately, that does mean that the estimates that we made about a very large gap in our finances due to government austerity cuts actually have proved to be correct. And so the approach that we've taken, where we sought to find savings where we can, and to recommend them through the scrutiny process, is probably the correct one. We've recommended, the gap is approximately £20 million, which is essentially a year which is equivalent roughly to about a quarter of all the money that we receive in council tax. So it's a very significant gap, a very significant reduction in funding that we've got. And we've recommended thus far about a quarter, about a half of that amount in savings that scrutiny is looking at currently. And obviously we're halfway through the process. 2 of the scrutiny panels have met, and the other 2 are still to meet. And so far we've got some really good feedback from them that we're roughly on the right lines. But we'll continue to monitor that. It's important to note, I think, one of the figures that's in here on page 54 of the papers, where the provisional change in our funding in terms of revenue support grant and baseline funding from business rates will have gone down cumulatively by 27% since 2016-17 as a result of government's policies. With that amount of strain on our resources, there is bound to be an impact on the services that we provide. There are bound to be cuts in our expenditure, which are not things that we came into local government in order to do, but we are having to do as a result of deliberate government policy. Now that is very unfortunate, but I think that the proof so far over several years of austerity is that we have been able to deliver savings in a sensible and thought through and planned way, and that has helped to minimise the impact on local residents and has helped to keep Merton a great place for families. That's obviously what we hope will continue to be the case, but the stress on our services is bound to increase as a result of these cuts. And I do think it's fair to point that out to the residents of Merton, that the government are putting a great deal of difficulties upon our services, and we are doing what we can within limited resources, and we will continue to listen to them to make sure that we do the best job that we can within those resources. So that's the paper.
Thank you very much. Can I echo your words on the difficulties that the council is placed in by the government's austerity measures, by its atrocious settlements to the local authority, but not just here in Merton, but throughout this country, all local authorities. But we have a way of working that is long-term, that addresses the concerns of residents first and foremost, but tough decisions ahead. Caroline Holland, our lead officer, would you like to add, especially on the settlement?
I suppose, as Councillor Anderson has already said, there was very little surprises in the settlement that was announced. So, on one hand, that was good. We had everything more or less planned, and on the other hand, that was bad. Because certainly there was no additional freedoms and flexibilities around additional council tax or the social care precept. One of the sums of money that we weren't expecting was the business account levy account surplus, for which we've got an extra £500,000. So certainly we've been sort of feeding that into the paper which comes back to Cabinet next month. We did also get some additional high needs funding, because there's been some extensive lobbying, I think, by counties and by authorities, just around the pressures being placed by high needs funding and special needs within the block, and the number of deficits that authorities are facing now going forward. So that's certainly an area where, again, it was done on overall schools funding as opposed to the high needs block. If it had been allocated on the high needs block, London would have got additional £9 million worth of resources. So whilst we're not saying looking a gift horse in the mouth, we are saying, you know, it's not solving the problem, that more needs to be done in this area. The GLA preset, there's also an update in this paper on that. So as they are a police authority, they were allowed to increase that part of their preset by £24, and overall the GLA preset will be going up by 8.9%, or £26.28, and their consultation closes today. So we see if that's then being accepted by their council and appropriate committee decision-making processes. So the gap is still, by the end of 22-23, just under £8.8 million. So there's still some quite significant challenges for us. And the paper also sets out the draft consultation on the business rate reform and these fair funding reform as well. So that's going to have some further challenges for us in 2021.
Thank you very much. Any other Cabinet members wishing to speak on this item? I know you're all looking into your individual budgets, and you're all working with officers and with Councillor Allison on the finances. I know these are very, very tough times, but we have, as I said, a vision of looking at these things with plenty of time. Now, a medium-term financial strategy, 4-year medium-term financial strategy. We still need to find £8 million. We will find that. We will present a balanced budget on in March, and we will not be a part of any local authority that is in trouble. Obviously, the one that we all know about, Northants, in deep trouble as a council. There are others, I understand. It's not fair to name them. Suffice to say that we here in London Borough Merton hark back to our Best Achieving Council Award in 2013, to our work to be Best Council in London, and to our business-like approach, and we stand by the residents in these very difficult times. But as Councillor Allison said, some very, very tough and difficult decisions need to be made, and we will make those decisions. So we're on item 8, Draft Business Plan 2019 to 2023, a long-term view based on a medium-term financial strategy. Recommendation 1 to 2, are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We're on item 9, Financial Report 2018-19, and this refers to November 2018. Councillor Mark Addis.
Thank you again, and this time I'd like to thank Roger Kershaw, who's lead member on the lead officer on this report. But I'd also like to thank all of the finance staff across all departments of the council for this very important work that they do. The financial monitoring that we do throughout the course of the year enables us to have a reasonable picture of how each department of the council is doing against their budget, where the pressures are, and where we're able to make savings and efficiencies, and that is very useful to us in the course of maintaining the budget of the current year, but it also helps us to predict what's likely to be needed in future years. So the work of all those staff is very highly valued by us. It's an important part of providing being a business-like council, and the work that they provide is very much appreciated. The latest update is relatively positive, in that the budget is actually very close to being achieved. There is a slight overspend that's projected by the end of the year, equivalent to just 0.04% of the gross budget of the council. So that's £215,000 out of a significantly higher budget than that. So I do appreciate all the work that everybody does to ensure that we get as close as we can to budget, and don't have to draw on reserves as far as possible. There's also some profiling, some changes to the capital programme that we're recommending as part of this, moving some expenditure into future years, and again, I think that's a good thing. I appreciate the officers in making those suggestions, and I move the report.
Thank you very much, Roger and Caroline. If 215,000 is 0.04% of the gross budget, what's the gross budget roughly?
Just over 500 million. So thanks for being on there. I suppose the only thing I would just say is, obviously, if you look at the progress that's been made with the community and housing budget, in Hannah's absence, I would like to flag that we're coming up to a difficult time normally for the health service and our social care colleagues. So winter pressures, so we just, at the moment, we have no indication that's likely to come our way. Certainly the hospitals are suffering, but I just want to give some caveats around that, so that could change.
Yeah. Roger and John, okay, thank you very much. We're on item 9, which is the financial report for November 2018, which is part of the 18-19 financial report. So we're on item 9, recommendations A and B. Are they agreed? Thank you very much. We move to item 10, former Virgin Active property, Battle Close, Southwest 19, 1AQ, handed back to the London Borough Council of Merton. Councillor Mark Addis.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. And I've set this precedent of thanking the officers who are leading on these papers. So it's only appropriate that I should thank Chris and his team for their work on this. Just to go over the history of this, it's obviously very unfortunate that Virgin Active wanted to close the business on Battle Close. The gym that was there and our findings have been all along that we think that the best use of the site is probably as housing. That there is a very good supply of gyms and leisure facilities that's been improved significantly as a result of the really great work that our leisure team has done in opening Morden Leisure Centre, and it's just such a fantastic facility. So I do want to just place on record our great thanks to everybody who's been involved in that. But with the Virgin Active site, we feel that it is best and most appropriate for housing. It's in a residential area, but we've had to sort of sit on it whilst we're waiting for the local plan to emerge, and it's fairly clear through the work of the local plan that housing is a use on this site that could be supported. And that there is already a sufficient supply of gym and leisure facilities in the area. Clearly, whilst it's been closed, there have been costs to the council which have been unfortunate. Some of that's been business rates which come back, much of it indirectly to the council anyway. But we have been the victim since it's come under our ownership of a pretty disgraceful criminality on the site that's meant that we've had to increase security, and that has certainly added to the costs. And it's really those costs that drive us to the position that we're in now, that we recognise that there is a need to make a decision without further drawing on our resources. And so I think it is time to prepare for demolition of the site and to start making headway with the long-term aim of providing some much-needed housing on the site. Even despite those costs that we've incurred, it is still providing very good value for the Merton Council taxpayer. I should stress that the value of the site as housing is considerably increased to what it was previously, and making use of the site is a very big important social need that we'll be adding as well. There is a shortage of housing of all kinds, but this also obviously provides us with the opportunity to negotiate the maximum level of affordable housing that can be economically viable on this site at the same time. So I'll move the paper with the thanking everybody who's been involved in working on the site over the last period, and looking forward to an optimistic future where this becomes the homes of local people and provides a real value for our local community and helps to make a great place for families.
Thank you very much. I'd like to pass over to Chris Lee.
So little to add, Chair, other than just to update on paragraph 2.8. That talks about the development or the consultation on the local plan. We have had a response from Sport England. They aren't a statutory consultee on the issue of demolition of the site. We'll take their comments with regard to the future land use into account alongside with this. That consultation is still open, closes towards the end of this month. There's nothing in their comments which challenges the recommendation in the report in front of you this evening. And you to note the paper and the recommendations presented, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any Cabinet member contributions? A straightforward issue. So we are on item 10, former Virgin Active, handed back to the Council by Virgin Active. The property in Backer Close, Southwest 191AQ, and it was handed back to the Council. And we are now on recommendation 1 that the demolition of the former Virgin Active Health Club handed back by Virgin Active to the Council is authorised. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We're on item 11, London Council's grant scheme subscription for 2019-20. Councillor Edith McCauley.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Leader. This report requests Cabinet to approve the Council's contribution to the London Council's grant scheme. Obviously, as a member of the London Council, we are required to make a financial contribution to the grant scheme. The grant scheme commissions pan-London services for homelessness and sexual and domestic violence. It also funds a number of employability schemes across South London Partnership area with match funding from the European Social Fund. The Council proposed contribution for 2019-2020 is £155,691, which is a marginal increase on the last financial year. I confirm there is a budget provision to cover in the MTFS. If Cabinet were to reject this decision, the Council would still be bound to contribute based on the majority decision of the members of the London Council. I therefore recommend the approval of this decision.
Thank you very much. Turn to Caroline Holland to add any views. Nothing to add. Thank you to Councillor Macaulay. Are there any other Cabinet members wishing to speak to this item? Just to remind Cabinet members and the meeting that the LCGS strategic approach to this money is from all local authorities, all 32, perhaps the City of London. The spending priorities are on combating homelessness, tackling sexual and domestic violence, and tackling poverty through employment. Well, recommendation A on item 11, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We come to our last item of this Cabinet meeting. That's item 12, Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy Ward Allocation Scheme. Councillor Martin Welton.
Thank you, Chair. Before we move to recommendations in the report, firstly, can I thank Tim Catley and the future Merton team for the work that they've undertaken in terms of this report, but also as well in terms of the background work that's been undertaken in looking at how neighbourhood community infrastructure levies are used in other boroughs. As Cabinet is aware, we first introduced this last year, where each ward had £5,000 to spend each. It was passed in terms of January 2018, and it was effectively a pilot scheme to see how things work. Clearly, as a council, we have learnt from that pilot scheme, and in this report we have been honest and upfront about how it actually worked, how it actually operated, and obviously lessons to have been learned in terms of proposals which were put forward, project scope, delay on feedback which was received, and clarity to when the works were additional within contracts and complex financial arrangements. Before we could move forward with SIL, it was important to put a set of processes into place in terms of how that money is administrated. In terms of community infrastructure money, this only relates to the 15% neighbourhood fund, and actually relates to a smaller proportion of that. So you see within this report, the proposal is to put £15,000 per ward spread over 3 years, but also as well giving the opportunity for wards to pool their resources collectively. We are aware that some wards are probably pretty artificial in terms of their creation. It's allowing communities to collectively work together, but also as well in terms of engagement from local councillors with their community, which is a key function of local councillors. So I will refer Cabinet to 2.17 of this report in terms of the formalisation of the ward allocation scheme. C1, examining the projects that qualify for funding and are straightforward to implement and maintain. They can't have ongoing revenue implications to the council. We have to be very clear in terms of that, given obviously the challenging financial resources, but you will obviously see a potential list of projects in 2.12. One of them could be graffiti removal, grants to community groups, repainting fences, alley gate schemes, park bins, painting of street columns. We also, as well, in terms of a longer term implementation period, I think last year, as we're well aware, it was a very rushed period in terms of people needing to get rid of £5,000 in the space of 3 months. This will be over 3 years, so it could be spread over that time period as well, which obviously will allow flexibility in terms of dealing with seasonal constraints, and also where proposals have longer implementation periods. You'll also see as well in terms of the report the processes to be actually followed in terms of the governance arrangements. Clearly people in the community will come forward to their local councillors, but having standard applications filled in by members of the public or council officers, those application forms are submitted to the local councillor. If the ward council supports the scheme, then forward the application form to the council, and then assessing the applications to ensure that it actually falls within the criteria, and also as well in terms of bid approval. What I think is crucial as well is that the councils are aware about how it actually works and how it actually operates, and that was again something that was lacking in the scheme. So a full briefing session will be organised for all ward councillors, which will include a list of project types that can be subject to bids, the individual officers responsible, but also as well in terms of the governing bidding and implementation process. And this will take place in advance of April 2019. I think it's crucial to actually engage local councillors within these projects, given that we've had obviously many newly elected councillors as well, but many existing councillors. So I asked Cabinet to approve this report. This is money which comes from levies on developments across the borough. I think it's a way of actually engaging with actual communities across the borough, but also as well looking at ways that we can actually fund small-scale projects in ward. So I formally move the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very exciting stuff coming towards. Chris Lee, did you want to add anything?
Listen to it, Chair.
Thank you. And I saw a very nice word in the report, pooling, whereby 2 or 3 wards can get together and pool their resources so they have a greater sum, but that would have to be approved by either the director or assistant director. So you can have wards coming together and pooling so that the bunch of money they're working with is say 30,000 or 45,000 and so on. Okay, so that's we're on our last item, Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy, Ward Allocation Scheme, a great scheme for councillors and for their residents. We're on item 12, recommendations A to C. They approve. Thank you. That concludes our Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.